Welcome everyone. Welcome back to Professor's Play, the show you come when you want your video game discussions to come with just a pixel of deep thinking, but mostly nonsensical conversations, which is what we do anyway. I'm your host, Phil Chavot, and I'm here again today with my friends and colleagues, John Adams.
Hey, everybody.
And Brandon West.
Hi.
We are here again today to talk about Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, and today we're going to be giving you full review of the game. So there are full spoilers in this podcast episode show. If you want to avoid any of those, then don't listen to this right now, but definitely bookmark it and come back.
Come back to it.
Come back to
I
it.
was about to say, don't tell them not to listen.
Yeah. Don't you dare touch that dial. And you listen to it after you finished. If you don't care about that, or you just want still whimsical conversations as I talk over Brandon, classic podcast editing etiquette. I'm not gonna edit it. It's fine. Yeah, you should still listen to it if you don't care, or if you care just a little, you should still listen to it also.
Yeah,
it's good stuff. So today, like I said, we're going to give you the full review or some impressions that we have, and then we're going to talk about nuzlocking. What do we think about that? Again, if you're unclear on what nuzlocking is, go back to our first episode, plug that, and then also maybe listen to our second episode, because it's fun. And we're going to get into some conversations about what happens in this Pokemon world, not about lore, that's for next time. So stay tuned, and then some other stuff at the end here if we have the time. But to begin with, we wanted to start with our full impressions of the game, and since I've done most of the talking in the beginning as usual, I'm going to pass it over to John. John, give us your full review.
Yeah, so I finished the entire game. As I talked about last time, finished it and started doing like end game content. So because I had a few extra weeks that I was ahead of the curve on everything else, I decided, hey, I'm going to start doing the competitive content in the game, which we'll talk about a little later. But I made it all the way through. I actually think this is, I'm gonna say it, this is my favorite Pokemon game that has ever been made. Yep.
I think favorite is fine.
Favorite is fine. Yeah, I'm not
best
saying
is,
best.
Yeah, best is tough.
Best would be tougher. But I'm saying favorite. I like the characters better. You've got characters and rivals who are more realistic, and that's saying a lot because Pokemon is never fully realistic. But they have motivations that actually matter, right, toward the larger story.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we've got gym battles that are interesting, and the terrestrialization, even though it's predictable, still is a fun gimmick mechanic. It's enjoyable, and then as we talked about last time. You have a world here where Pokemon are wandering around, doing stuff, living life.
Like animals out there.
Yeah. I think that the initial reviews of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have been unkind and unharsh. And I will say, the last time I complained about moving through the boxes and how slow that was, and they fixed that in a patch.
Oh,
It goes much faster now.
I guess I never noticed that it was slow.
It's so slow for me.
Really?
Yeah, it would take like days to load in as the boxes.
Oh, my boxes still take days to load in, actually.
Oh, mine are faster.
Yeah, no, mine still take days.
Well, maybe it was just me. Thanks to one employee.
One employee that's like, oh, this guy seems cool.
This guy seems awesome.
I agree with all that. I think that saying favorite is definitely fair. And also, I know that Pokemon games are not realistic at all. And we can talk about this in the next episode, which is about lore and how the Pokemon world works. But in this game, it feels like they're making a concerted effort at showing you, like, hey, this is a world where there's a structure here. Because if you play the original ones, they're just like, you're a 10-year-old, like, inspired by Japanese people who are 8 and go do, like, chores, like in that Netflix show. But you're a 10-year-old, go battle Pokemon. Why only you have Pokemon? We don't know.
We'll explain that later.
Why there's a Pokemon war, apparently? Oh, don't know. We'll explain that at some point, maybe. Right? So in this one, they're like, okay, so you go to school here so you can learn. There's a humanities track.
There's some teachers.
Here's how this world works. Although there is some stuff that is like contradictory. So like, if I evolved my Palmo into Palmot this morning, which is a Pokemon you evolve by walking around with it. Mm-hmm. So I did that yesterday. Excuse me. And the description for Palmot on the Violet is, it can store as much electricity as an electric car. And I'm like, there are no cars in this world. Did you see a single car in that world?
But we know there are... We'll get into the lore next episode. But we know there are cars.
Cars elsewhere. But in Paldea, there are no cars.
I've never seen a car in Paldea.
Right. So I was
or
like,
bikes.
Or bikes, except for yours. And people ride cyclozars.
People ride cyclozars.
Yeah.
But like, there's no bicycles.
But I feel like there's a genuine attempt at making this like more real. Even the writing, like they say like oof. and stuff like that. That's like more what people say instead of being robotic things. So I think they're doing a concerted effort at making this feel like, hey, it's fantastical, but also like this is kind of how it works, which is interesting because that's kind of how it, like, there's been a shift in anime like that too.
I think one of the nicest things is that in this game, nobody hates me for no reason.
Yes.
Right? Like, in all of the previous Pokemon games, there was always one...
Just something you have to worry about in real life.
Jerk, yeah. Like, you bump into somebody and they're like, hey, you, now we're going to be rivals for the next 40 years. I hate everything you do and I will destroy you. And this game, nobody's like that. They're like, you like Pokemon? I like Pokemon. Let's have a friendly battle. And you're like, oh, man, we did that.
And terrorize without you knowing.
And then, you run the problem the other direction where she's like, let's have a friendly battle. And then you beat her and then she's like, battle again? Battle again?
Please.
Battle again? I need that high.
No, I think for sure, and I think that's something that we've seen in anime too, where like I'm watching like some 90s anime right now, and stuff just happened and no one goes to classes, but no one really talks about it.
Nobody goes.
And like if you're watching a show like that now, you're like, aren't you supposed to be in class?
Right.
Like, at least give me a throwaway line of being like, yeah, we cut class all the time.
Yeah,
cool.
And then you're like, all right, that's all I need. I don't need much justification.
No.
Just a bare minimum.
And in this game, they're providing like at least a bare minimum justification. Like, why do just random people around the world have Pokemon? Oh, because they're all students.
And my favorite moment for that is halfway through your art class, the art teacher has a breakdown. He
really does.
He like cries and he talks about his friend and how moved he was, and he like goes on a long rant about like humanity and the beauty of art while sobbing in front of a class of 8-year-olds, of like 10-year-olds, right? And the next class, he is like, the director has talked to me. I want to say that my behavior was wildly inappropriate. I'm sorry for this, and I will try to hold myself to a higher standard in the future.
And he doesn't. He still cries a lot.
He doesn't. He still cries a lot. But I feel like in a past Pokemon game, they would have just treated that behavior as normal.
Yes.
They'd be like, that's how teachers are sometimes.
Yeah, or like they would just be a robot, basically, who does nothing.
Right.
Yeah. So there's definitely an effort here to make things seem more real, which we'll talk about more or less next week or next episode. For me, my like one word, if I had to summarize the experience of playing this game, is whimsical. Because like I said in the last episode, I started, and if you haven't listened to it, go check it out. I started the game, and I'm like, I don't want Pokemon walking around. Give me grass, and I'm gonna walk in there. And then I saw Weasels and Lechonks, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
This is a Pokemon world.
This is a Pokemon world. It's a world where Pokemon are animals, and it was incredible to walk around and seeing how they behave. There was an example I told John about this where. So there's a couple of Pokemon based on like a mangoose. Is that
like a mongoose?
A mongoose, yes, excuse me.
Yep.
And there's Pokemon based on snakes, obviously. And the description for this one Pokemon called Zangoose is that it fights with Sevipers, which are snakes.
Right.
And I was like, wow, it'd be really funny if when I'm walking around I might see them fighting, and I did. Like, I saw them like staring each other down and like doing the thing that they do when they like start battle. I didn't see them like a cloud of smoke, like a little poof fighting, but they were clearly enemies in this space. So they created a world in which animals are behaving like animals, except they are a Pokemon. And
Pokemon are not animals. But we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that later, or next class, next episode. Please join us. So the performance issues are definitely detracting from my experience, especially when you get to Castle Royale Lake, because its FPS there is always 10. I found out that the best way to like mitigate that is if you turn your camera always to face a wall, because it has to load less stuff.
Oh, so that's interesting from a programming perspective.
Yeah.
They programmed it so that it's only loading what you're looking at.
Exactly. Yeah. So it only has to load the world around you, right? Of what you're seeing immediately.
There's some interesting like epistemological stuff.
Yeah.
There.
True.
Like,
yeah.
Does it exist if you're not?
It doesn't in Pokemon.
It doesn't in Pokemon.
So if you're facing the wall, it's remarkably better, but it's impossible to do that all the time. So
you're looking for Pokemon.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But while I think that like the first two gens were like genre defining, like RPGs and turn-based games are based on what the early Pokemon were. Like
100%.
they helped
that
evolve
Final
the genre.
Fantasy.
Yes. Well, Final Fantasy came first. They helped evolve the genre like in different ways, right?
Right.
And I know that Black and White, the story I think is still better, just because of how conflicting they create the scenarios. Mm-hmm. And I think in this one they do a better job of being like, Pokemon do actually enjoy battling. Because in Black and White they're like, Pokemon enjoy battling, shut up and just do it. And in this one they're like, here's why this happens.
Yep.
But the story in Black and White I still think is better, where they create like some sort of like dichotomy there. Sun and Moon I haven't played, but I heard it like crazy polished.
Yep.
This one is not that.
Nope.
But despite the whole thing, I think if you're looking at the intent of why Pokemon was created, do you guys know this? Why Pokemon was made by the Satoshi Tajiri?
No, hit us with it.
It's a fun story. So Satoshi Tajiri is from Kanto, like just outside Tokyo in Japan. So
That tracks.
the reason Kanto is called
Is the
Kanto in
first
the first
region,
game is
right.
because it's the eastern region of Japan. If it's west, sorry about that. But basically, he lived by a forest, and he and his friends, for fun, would run into the forest and collect insects. Bugs. And every time they saw a different bug or a cool bug, they would imagine either they had powers or they would just like literally collect them and be like, I have this one, do you want to trade? I have 3 of this one. And so when he created a magazine called Game Freak, which was guides for games.
Yep.
And eventually, him and this other person that I forgot to put the name down here, they were like, let's make a game. And his idea was, I want to recreate the feeling I had when I was walking around the forest as a 10-year-old, finding different insects and looking under rocks and looking at different
10-year-olds finding and collecting stuff.
And this is the closest thing to being a 10-year-old being fascinated by bugs, which but being fascinated by bugs and running out there and just finding a different kind of scarab, finding a different kind of butterfly,
Love it.
all that kind of stuff.
And then finding out that it has powers through experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think this is the closest
We get to his
the
original
vision.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's why I think it is. It has to be in a conversation of best Pokemon game in the series.
Yeah.
The performance issues kind of make me not want to say that, but the game itself, there's an underlying game there. I think because of the whimsical nature and the fact that it's the closest thing possible to.
And you got all the way to the end, right?
Yes,
To the
I
crater?
finished the story. I finished the Nuzlocke.
And
Yes.
so you're saying that knowing that beautiful, mad ending.
Oh no, I haven't seen the like crazy paradox ending yet.
You can't on the story front
Okay.
until you've done the crater.
Okay.
And I'll spoil it now.
Yeah.
If you guys want to. So at the end of the game, at the very, very end, they ask you to go to a crater with Arvin. Have you met Arvin yet?
Yes.
Who?
With the nice hair.
He has really nice hair.
Oh yeah, the
He's a
idiot
skull
with,
vet.
the idiot with the squirrel.
Yeah.
Yes, and he gives you. He's the one that's supposed to be in charge of your giant lizard, but he's like, I'm done with this. I give it to you. And then later, you go around the world with him, collecting special magical herbs to restore the health of his dog and also to the lizard. And once you've restored them all, his mom invites you to the crater. Or dad, depending on which version you have.
It's dad for you.
Invites you down to the crater to see him, to help him with a project. Arvin hasn't seen his parents in 10 years because they've just been there ignoring him the whole time. Which is why he's so attached to his dog.
Oh my god.
Because that dog is the only friend in the world
Jesus
he had.
Christ.
Dude, it's so good. All right. And then, so you do this because this dog was injured in a very bad accident. And so you're going around collecting these herbs to slowly bring
And this
it
is
back.
only unlocked if you do all of the story.
All of the story.
Okay.
Everything. So finally his dad calls him after 10 years and says, Arvin, I know that on this quest for all these titans and these herbs to restore your dog, which is the only friend we left you after 10 years, you are now sufficiently strong. I want you to come help me with a problem in the crater. I know you're strong. And you think he's talking physically or with Pokemon, but he's not.
And he's the only person in the crater.
In the crater.
Yeah.
He's the only person in the crater. You go down there and you find out that there's some weirdness. The crater research bases have been destroyed. So you have to go through and unlock them all manually to unlock the final research base. And you get into the final research base, and it turns out that his father or mother has been dead the entire time.
What?
In the game. And that what you've actually been talking to is an AI replication that
Ooh, wow.
she
Ethical
made at the
implications.
last minute as she was dying because of a Pokemon attack and because of this giant paradox Pokemon outbreak. And the AI, because it was programmed with the sentience of the mother, cared enough about him to reach back out and try to console him through making him an independent, strong person. But had to make sure he had the emotional strength to take a journey and find out that his own mother was dead.
Jesus Christ.
It ends with you confronting her because even though the AI doesn't want to, the AI has been programmed both to take care of Arvin under all circumstances and
This is like the Asimov's laws.
and to keep the paradox base running. But the problem is that as long as the paradox base is running, these terrible paradox Pokemon are going to keep coming through the portal and destroying the natural environment, and somebody needs to shut it down. And the AI knows this, and she's hired you and Arvin and brought you on with your friends, Nimona and Penny, to stop this paradox machine. But the AI knows that once you start stopping it, the AI override will override itself and try at all costs to stop it. So
because it's like maintain yourself is like the third.
Is your third.
Wow.
So she is training Arvin to emotionally handle the ability to kill his own mother so that he can save all of Paldea.
Okay, fair enough. That is pretty good.
It's fucking amazing. It's the best storyline in any Pokemon game you've ever seen.
I would watch that. I would watch that as a Blade Runner film.
It's a good anime, and the final scene is she merges with the Paradox construct, and like there's like crazy, like techno flashes of like black and white, and a whole cybernetic chamber that you have to fight her in to shut down the machine. She has every Pokemon in a Master Ball because she's a G like that. Yeah, she's really terrifying. And I assume the dad storyline is literally the exact same with the dad.
Man, yeah.
And it actually makes more sense with the dad because she's supposed to be reaching into the past, but she somehow developed this like crazy futuristic AI tech.
Fair enough.
And it would actually make more sense with the dad because he's reaching into the future.
It's not the dad that makes sense. It's the fact that in Violet it's about the future.
It's about the future, and so it makes more sense that he would be able to create an AI tech that would watch his son.
Yeah.
With her, it's like
you're a historian.
You're a historian. Why is this a thing? But the sentiment hits really hard, and so at the end, like Arvin's crying because his mother tells him he's strong enough to manage on his own now, as she dies from him just killing him because she died 10 years ago, and the last remnants of her have to be put down.
Wow,
so I'm not going to agree with you on the X and Y.
If you could see my face right now, it's okay. So fair enough. I think that is a better arc.
It's great. And the best part of it is it's not a Pokemon arc that's like the world is ending.
Yes, and you have to do something about it.
Because sometimes it's
the world is ending.
It's hard to believe sometimes that like 10-year-olds are the people we're tasking with like like preventing the destruction of the entire world when like the Elite Four has champions and stuff. But this one's not like that because the Paradox Pokemon are all they are is they're an invasive species, and it's really a story about like putting down
people bringing these in.
But it's not like such a catastrophe that it feels like you're a 10-year-old doing what the government should be doing.
Which is what it is in Sword and Shield, for example. Yeah.
This is more a personal story about like Arvin and his parents and ending his mother's research.
The thing I think about Black and White that's nice is that they are like, big spoiler, is that they are like creating this dichotomy of should Pokemon fight? But you know, the Team Plasma pretends that that's what they're going to do, and it's not.
Right.
But it still creates a doubt in your mind, right? So that one's like overall ethically like interesting. This one is like AI ethics all the way.
Yeah.
If we can make people alive, quote unquote, based on them being AIs, should we? Have you seen that experiment where they recreated literally a person from AI conversations, and the family cannot tell the difference between the AI and the person that was alive?
That's this game.
Yes.
That's this game. Is that Arvin's mom has been functionally dead for 10 years. And her ghost is talking to you through the remnants of the machine she programmed. And the machine she programmed simultaneously knows it needs to take care of Arvin, but it also needs to die. And so it's trying to train him to be strong enough to put her.
Yeah. So it's the idea of like, should we? Is this so? If it helps someone cope with their grief, they can still talk to their son, mother, dad. Right. As an AI, should we do this? But is that a sort of crutch where it's creating unrealistic expectations for emotional trauma? Right.
Or for the human experience.
Yeah. So there's a lot of research on this that I need to look into, but yikes. Wow.
What a and like you guys said, the reason they don't know about this is because this is not the Elite Four, right? This is post Nuzlocke. So you do all the gyms. They kind of hint at this. You get this really beautiful story with Arvin and his dog, where he says, "My dog got hurt. I need to go find all these Titan Pokemon and destroy them so that we can find a little herb. And that herb, if I feed it to my dog, is like a wonder medicine, and it will restore him." And you do restore him, and the dog is really sweet. I love it. But you finish all of that, and then his mom calls, and the thing just goes off the railroad. Right? Like, they're just so... it's like if you had a game... It's like you had an episode of like the movie Marley and Me, and then at the end, we shifted to Blade Runner.
That sounds pretty good.
It was good. Yeah, okay. I appreciate it.
Have you ever seen, I think I've told you about this, there's a movie called Summer of '84.
No, Summer of '84.
Oh my god, dude. That movie shifts from like Stranger Things minus sci-fi, and then like an hour and a half in, it suddenly becomes Friday the 13th.
Yeah, this is like...
Except worse.
Or like From Dusk Till Dawn, where like you think this is going to be a heist movie, and then Like, you think this is going to be a movie about
Yeah.
a son confronting his mother over abandoning him in favor of her research. And it's really about a mother that cared about her son more deeply than could even transcend her own life.
Wow.
Yeah.
In a game for 8-year-olds.
In a game for 8-year-olds. Yeah, so like there's a lot of like, oh man, I wish I had played this through, because there are a lot of ethical implications here that we talk about in AI research today that are like, we're not there yet, but once we are,
And we're getting there.
but once we are, what, again, a man's reach must exceed his grasp, what kind of thing? Should we be programming AI that can literally pretend to be human better than we can discern? So Turing test stuff, basically, right? It's pretty wild.
Those are the questions you answer at the very end of this game. And then
For
he
8-year-olds.
finishes- For 8-year-olds. You finishes your whole team, you beat her, you destroy her, she has a beautiful last line with Arvin, and then you're all like, well, let's take the rest of our summer vacation to go have fun. And then you skip off to the sunset.
Beautiful.
And Arvin is like...
Arvin is just, I'm gonna need some time here.
Yeah,
guys.
Arvin's like, I'm gonna need a moment, and Nimona's like, do you want to have a Pokemon battle?
By moment, do you mean a Pokemon battle?
battle?
She has a problem.
Yeah.
She has a problem.
No, she has a real problem.
She organizes a whole tournament after that.
Well,
to
even
have, like,
even like a
Let's determine what the school's grand champion is, because that's where she's like,
Like-
that was really strong. I wonder if I could beat someone that strong. You beat it. Champion.
Yeah. It's like like Clavel in the beginning. The very beginning is he's like, he even says like, Nimona has a little bit of a ... enthusiasm problem with Pokemon battling. Yeah, just
So
polite way of putting it.
It's not
Okay,
at all enough word for addiction.
Wow,
Side tangent. But yeah.
that is a crazy story and a lot of stuff to sink your teeth into about like ethical like AI stuff.
Yep.
Wow.
The creator is also the best, from a design perspective, since you guys didn't make it down there, is the best rendered part of the game.
Makes sense.
Like, I jokingly called the creator when I was talking to a friend. I was like, this creator is where the money went.
Fair
in
enough.
Pokemon Scarlet, it's rendered in multiple levels. The mist is coming down. There's much less graphical issues within it because it's more self-contained anyway. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm leveling up my Pokemon so I can get to the final battle with Nimona because I lost some in my last battle with the Elite Four.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I haven't got to that point yet, because I could like technically be there, but I'm preparing myself. Because even though my nuzlocke is done, I'm still like keeping the 5 level rule because I think that's the most fun for me.
Yeah, and yours will be different because mine, of course, is all sort of like past themed.
Yeah.
So yours will be like robots and stuff.
True.
Somehow.
More AI stuff to talk about.
More AI stuff.
Okay, after that, wow, emotional roller coaster.
Yep.
Brandon has just gotten revenge on Nimona for the first time.
Hey!
Yeah, so he remember last week he lost to her and he had to
Outside
restart his
secrets.
nuzlocke. So this time he got to that point and he beat her. Brandon, tell us about that and tell us, your impressions here.
Alright, so first time fighting Nimona, I cheated to win. Well, I won, but I did it through cheating. Didn't realize. My
Cheating
bad.
for us, not against Nimona, because Nimona
Right.
deserves to lose every time. Let's
Every
put that
time.
out there,
I
yeah.
absolutely agree, right?
Yeah,
it's
Just
kind of,
drives you to
it's
hard.
like
Yeah.
I entered a sword fight with a toothpick and didn't
The
realize
first
I was
time.
unprepared. Now
Yeah.
I still managed to claw my way out, but I had to hit below the belt several dozen times. You literally used like every single potion I had. Like literally just stalled her out. Just like potion. Anyway. So this time, I entered a sword fight with what could probably best be described as an Apache longbow attack helicopter. Because not only did I level my Fuecoco up to like level 12 or 13,
Which is like 7 levels above.
I also
Still legal.
Still
technically.
legal.
I caught a Ralts instead of Weasel because apparently I was banned from
Ralts is,
Weasel.
dude,
Yeah.
Gardevoir is great.
Right, and
Is it
I
a
was
male
like
Ralts?
female.
Ah,
Perfect.
My entire team right now is female, which is hilarious because my Fuecoco was named John. Because I
Nice.
didn't realize. So you are officially Jonah.
It's a beautiful
Or
name.
Jonah.
it's a good name.
I just leave it John.
Hey, Pokemon does this whole thing about like being as androgynous as possible,
Yeah, that's fair.
which
Yeah, that's
is
fair.
an interesting thing to discuss from like sex and gender perspective, but also game coding perspective. But again, they also don't let us pick our body shape or our age, but they do let us pick
True.
that.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so of course John the Fuecoco was way overpowered for this fight. And not only did I also catch a Ralts for the high special defense, I also caught a Palmy for the electric resist. And when I was in the cave, I made sure to catch that Diglett I saw the first time so that I had an electric immunity. So I came in here with backup plans to my backup plans.
It's competitive play.
Yes. Yeah, and John destroyed the entire team in like 4 embers.
No, he walked in there and he's like, "Oh, you use electric Pokemon? I had no idea. Here's a ground type, an electric type, a special defense specialist, and then also my best Pokemon at 7 levels above yours."
Oh, you're going to Terra? It will never help.
So yeah, I way overcompensated for my failure the first time, and like just absolutely demolished that fight for the most part.
Like teaching, you just gotta show improvement.
Did you get the Did you get the proud look? Nemona's proud look is my favorite thing in the whole game. She twirls like this little hair, and she just looks really like you've accomplished.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see me doing it.
Like, yeah, just like that. She like it would be the equivalent of like if a child's first basketball shot was straight through the hoop, and the father was like,
"Man, I'm gonna be a billionaire."
I'm gonna be a billionaire. Goal. She does that just because she's like, "Man, finally somebody to battle with me."
True. That's the reason.
Forever.
That's the real reason. It's
Right.
not like because wow, good for you. It's more like wow, finally.
So yeah, I beat Nemona, and then that was last night because I am just ridiculously busy right now. And I decided, you know what? That completes this narrative. That is like the bookends to this story, to the absurdist struggle that is my gameplay through Pokemon Violet. So I'm like, that might be as far as I make it for the entire podcast, but I think it is worth it.
It only gets better from here.
It only gets better.
It only gets more FPS-y and better from here.
Well, that's good. And now I will say, I know this is in the script as well. The part of the game that I like the Pokemon walking around. I like beating Nemona. I like getting the revenge there and like designing my team for her because I just love that sort of stuff. But, and I'm not sure if maybe I'm just like an impatient old man or something, but the entire beginning of the game, I was sitting there mashing the A button like it dispensed free ice cream. I was like, yeah, like I know you're the director. Move on. Give me my Pokemon. I just want to go battle Nemona. I'm so over all the cutscenes, all the dialogue. I am such a bad person because I set the text speed to the highest speed.
No, always.
It literally only has fast. I was looking for like
it's
the
not like
ultra
hundreds
fast.
of people created this game.
Right.
Just so that you could see every one of those friends.
I know. I was like, is there like an ultra fast option here? Can I get it to display like 6 times faster than this?
So the first time I was playing, I didn't feel that, but when I did it again, I was like, man, this is like a 45-minute of nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I also I turned off cutscenes because I'm like, I can't handle this.
For those of you who don't know, turning off cutscenes in Pokemon is not just like cutscenes; it's also any story scene gone. So they'll have like
I didn't know there was an option. Like,
it is.
Oh, it is.
Are you even playing a Pokemon game? At
So
that
like
point?
here's
It's
the
like,
thing. So it's
don't do it through the first
it's
one.
hilarious because they're like if you take cutscenes out and you'll have like scenes where it's like, wow, I can't believe I just found you here. You battle, cuts back to like, wow, I can't believe we just battled here, and you have no context on what happened in between. Just that the stuff is happening.
It's amazing.
But this is interesting because we were talking about this with someone else earlier this week, where games don't have manuals anymore.
They don't.
That's not a
anymore.
part of gaming is having manuals. That's why we turned to online. That's why we turned to quote unquote unofficial paratexts, which are texts made by someone else not related with Nintendo or the game to help us do the game because they don't do that officially anymore.
For our non-existent Gen Z and Gen Alpha listeners, back in the day when you used to buy an N64
Dawn of
cartridge
Time.
or a game, you can get through GameCube,
GameCube.
right? It would come with a little
Honestly,
booklet.
PS3 booklet.
It had some,
Yeah.
and that would tell you all about the world, all about the lore, all about everything. You were talking about Zelda and how like
1986.
if Zelda came without a booklet, nobody would know anything about how this game is.
And you can, and again,
works.
the thing is, like, you can play games without knowing the story. That's totally fine. Like, games exist for several reasons why people play games differently. Like, you want to skip the cutscenes. I want to watch them if it's the first time I'm watching them. But if 1986 Zelda, the reason we had game manuals was because you cannot fit story in the cartridge.
Yeah, 'cause it's
Final
8-bit,
Fantasy
right?
is the first game to have crazy story,
In the
and the
game.
reason it's called Final Fantasy, it's because it was the creators' Final Fantasy, quote unquote, to create a game that was more than just Pong. Because he was like, no one's ever going to want a game with story, but this is my fantasy, so it's going to be my Final Fantasy. Lo and behold, we have like 26 of them, counting like remakes.
The
right?
real final.
Real final.
Super final.
Super duper extra Final Fantasy. But then we got to a point where like we can put story in games, so we don't need manuals. So manuals kind of became like, here's what items do, here's the buttons. And then they kind of became like, if you need help, go to this website. And now they're gone forever. So maybe that's why games feel super hand-holdy now, especially games that are for 8-year-olds, quote unquote.
We can't expect anybody to read anymore.
People don't read this stuff, so you're like, here's everything you need to know to function in the first hour, which means you get to do nothing except railroad it, right? But then you have stuff like Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is a lot of for tutorial space, which is they let you loose in there and you figure stuff out by doing it. So there are ways of doing it that isn't hand-holdy, but
Not Pokemon.
yes,
They haven't figured. Well, and we should talk about.
and there's some stuff they don't tell you that they should.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, we should talk about like what Pokemon's goals are when they're training you to play this game. Because if you watch through all those tutorials, what do you actually get out of it ultimately? Like,
It's stuff that everyone already knows how to catch a Pokemon.
right.
Yes.
Like, there's nobody that is 8 games into Pokemon that can't figure it out or wouldn't figure it out given some amount of instruction.
No, and also the thing is like they've made it easier to navigate menus in the battle, so like you can press a button and automatically throw a Pokeball.
And the menus now don't even have little icons next to words. So
Yes.
you don't even have to read it. You just know this is shaped like a bag, this is shaped like a Pokeball. So even if you had it in a foreign language, it would be pretty clear, which does raise sort of like a user experience, or what they would call in my field like UX question, which is like when you're training the people to play, what are you training them to do, right? What are you training them to make out of the game? How are people supposed to experience this game? And a lot of those early cutscenes are really just about like showing off the new graphical capabilities, which is cool and it is nice, except for you're drawing attention to the one thing that you didn't really do all that
Yes.
well. You're like, hey, let us show you a picture of a classroom with these robotic legs kicking at odd angles under a desk.
And it takes forever. I was like,
Yeah, do we need 45 minutes of this?
I didn't care. I'm gonna sound like the most impatient person in the world. Like,
No, I mean, I doing it again, I'm just like, it takes you 45 minutes to get from waking up for the first time
Right.
to getting to the first point where you can trade, which is like almost freedom.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, the first time, I think I would say, yes, you're an impatient old. Like, you just need to experience it the first time. But most games prevent this by, after the first, like, couple of lines of dialogue, they say, have you played this game before?
Yes.
Yes or no? And if you say yes, it'll skip you past those
Or
45
there's a
minutes.
skip
that would be
cutscene button,
amazing.
not a, do you want to skip all cutscenes forever? Go to the menus to
That's
tell
the
us.
only... I didn't
Yes.
even know that existed.
Yeah.
there's a what?
They don't have a skip button. That's
They
what
don't
I'm
have a
saying.
skip
Oh,
button.
they
What
don't.
you did is like
Okay.
the nuclear option, which is I don't want to see story ever again.
So from a user experience perspective, it's terrible.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we probably just want to skip the first 45, and then I'd like to see some of the cutscenes once I get past
Right,
that.
like I would like to see the, hey, let me like refuse with the time paradox
Yeah.
to like close the portal to Gallifrey.
So
or
remember
whatever.
to remember to uncheck that option in the menu because or else you're gonna miss all that.
I don't know, man. I'm a very adversarial sort of gamer, so like now I feel like it's me against the designers just playing. Maybe like now that I'm actually like to the school and I might actually be able to like do stuff.
Yeah, you get to do stuff once you leave the school.
Oh
They like
my
set
God.
you free. Yeah.
Well, and this comes back again at the end of the game. So at the very end of the game, after I finished all the story, after I finished all everything, I was like, well, what do I do now? You have a couple of options. You can catch every Pokemon, right? You can wander around and find like shinies, or you can do some raids, which I did.
Yep.
Some raids. Or you can jump into competitive play. And so this is the first time ever in my life that I decided, all right, I'm gonna try my hand at
Yeah.
competitive Pokemon.
Let's talk about that
Okay,
right now,
well.
and we'll talk about how that relates to how they teach you to play the game.
That's what I was saying,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I get to competitive. I start playing competitive through.
Explain that a little bit.
Yes.
What is competitive?
What is competitive? So you press the start menu, you open up your screen, and you have an option that says Poke Portal, and you go to the Poke Portal and you can select ranked play. And ranked play is a system where you go up against another live human being. You each get 6 Pokemon, but you only get to choose 3 of them for a single battle, which is all I did. And then you fight against their best 3 Pokemon. Those Pokemon can't hold the same items. They all get powered back down to level 50. and you get to face off each other. Whoever wins moves up in rank, whoever loses moves down in rank, and hopefully it balances out your ranked system eventually.
So if you ever played Madden or FIFA online, it's
Same
like
idea.
a sports game. You get matched up with someone online, hopefully the same rank as you, and you get to have fun, hopefully playing that online.
Right. Now, talking about how the game like trains you or how it gets you playing the game, when you get into the game and you start battling people like Nimona and people like the director, they give you a couple of tips and pointers. They're like, make sure that your type matchups are good. So ground beats electric, electric beats water, water beats fire, etc., etc. And they say, hey, just to let you know, there are certain moves that lower attack and defense, right? And if you attend Academy, like we talked about last time, they'll even teach you that certain words, like harshly or severely, mean they lower attack and defense by that much. So I get into ranked, and I think, you know what? This is rank 1. And in a lot of games, because I play like Magic Online, Magic Arena, and I play a couple of other different online games, when you first jump in and you're like a rank 1 or rank bronze or you're at the very bottom, even if you're not that great at the game, people at rank 1 are usually like 10-year-olds while their moms are busy at work, right? So they're like barely functioning. They've picked a team at random of their favorite Pokemon, and I was like, well, I could probably jump in hopefully and fight this out. I will tell you right now, the Pokemon competitive ranked play starts at where like most, like 5 ranks up where most ranked systems start.
Yeah.
Like there is no casual competitive play for Pokemon, and it kicked my ass. I broke into it, and I made a team, functioned out. I was like, all right, I'm gonna hopefully get in. I know my type matchups.
Your team was based on type matchups and strong Pokemon.
Strong Pokemon. I was like, these are the ones I've been playing with all game. I think they're fun. I've got some type matchups. I jump in. First time out of the gate, people had all of the strongest Pokemon in the game currently. So they had a Gimmighoul, a Mimikyu, they had a Sweeper, a large dragon of some sort. All of them were perfectly statted out with perfect IVs. 2 of them were shinies.
And IVs means that because when Pokemon gain levels,
Yep.
they gain stats, which is why the levels go up.
Right.
Depending on the Pokemon, each stats grows differently, and you want like a Pokemon to have a really high speed stat if you want it to be fast.
Yes.
There's a way in the game. If it used to be really hard, now it's fairly simple.
It's fairly easy.
To tailor those stats within the level to
That's
make
exactly what
That's
you want.
EVs.
yes,
As EVs.
yeah.
IVs are the ones that they start with.
Yes.
Basic.
Yes.
But you can also adjust those in these games
Yeah.
with bottle caps.
Yeah.
Which are great. But normally, just to show you sort of the nature of these all had sort of perfect levels for all of those, which tells you that the person sank at least a week's worth of time, if not more, into constructing this perfect
So
team.
within their perfect 100 levels, with their 50,
Right.
they have perfect training to like the minuscule level, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so this was rank 1, so I jumped in and just got destroyed. I was like, well, that's maybe a one-off in a rank system. Sometimes you compare against a high person, sometimes you compare against a low person. Proceeded to lose 7 battles in a row.
By destruction.
By destruction. Just getting wrecked. And they weren't using like basic strategies like, well, you're using a fire Pokemon, I'll use a water Pokemon, we'll switch around and change the type matchups. They were doing things like laying advanced traps, setting those traps, substituting out, and then re-substituting on top of the substitute to bring things out. They were using spread moves that would spread to all the Pokemon and then keep the stats that they had increased when they switched out to other Pokemon. Like, this was high-level strategy.
We're not even going to try to explain that to you, listener, because that's like beyond the level of...
It takes a long time. It
Yeah.
would take an extra 40 minutes to explain the complications of these strategies, which I now know, because after losing 7 times, I was like, alright, knuckle crack, let's get into it, let's figure it out. So I went online and started to read a lot, which we can talk about as well, because the online guides for Pokemon are some of the worst guides I've ever read.
For tech writing, and also here's the, I think, not bigger question, but like first question is, why is this not in the game menus?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
And no one teaches you about these strategies. Nobody teaches you about these terms, so they call these Pokemon like sweepers, stealth rocks, setups, substitutes, trick rooms. These are all like concrete strategies.
Most of those are not terms that you apply to the Pokemon. Sweeper is a term for the Pokemon.
Right.
A lot of those are like Trick Room is more like the team-wide strategy.
It's
so
a team-based
here's
strategy.
a fun fact about me. I have not played that much competitive Pokemon. I played a little bit on the Pokemon Showdown servers, but I have read so many Smogon articles that everything that he's saying right here, I'm just like, yep.
Why is this
exactly.
not in the game? Like, why isn't the
But
game?
it doesn't train you for that.
The
It
harshly
is-
thing, like So they have a school system in this game where we talked about, where if you go to class, they'll tell you like, hey, harshly means 2 stages.
Yeah.
Right, of stat increase or
Here's how
decrease.
types work against each other.
Why, when you are going into like what this move is, it doesn't tell you like harshly, by the way, means 2 stages.
Right.
Yeah.
Or why is that locked
When I
behind
go
a
to school, why are they not teaching me the strategies that actual competitive players use? Why are they teaching me the strategies that they've decided somehow are strategies in the game?
You do not need, as a rule, real competitive strategies to beat the game.
No, you don't.
Right.
Especially the way that they, and this, I know it's part of our script, like,
Yeah. No, go ahead.
the Pokemon Company doesn't really want you nuzlocking. And if you're not nuzlocking, if you've got things like, you know, you can use as many revives as you have in your pack,
Right.
let's face it, this is a game that a 4-year-old can conceivably beat.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right?
In theory
Yeah.
and in practice.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And, you know, I beat Pokemon Gold and Silver when I was like 8 years old. Was I
Yeah.
any good at the game? No.
Potions.
Exactly. Like, potions, revives, and, like, you know, 1 level 88 Typhlosion backed up by, like, some legendaries and then, like, a Pidgeotto because,
Yeah.
forget grinding.
But if you're going to have a game where that competitive play is an option within the game, shouldn't some aspect of the game, somewhere along the whole trail, prepare you for the stomping that you will undoubtedly receive at rank 1?
It's to so, okay. Metagame and game are way too disparate entities, and I think that carries across for pretty much everything. I don't think that, like, highest difficulty of pretty much any game really prepares you to play against human players.
I slightly agree, slightly disagree. Because, for example, the difference with I think with Pokemon is that it is a game based on numbers. You don't see it, but every time you click a button, there's a dice rolling in the background.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever happens is based on quote unquote luck. Obviously, it's chance, but it's like, you know, it's based on how much chance you create for your own side. You could still miss an attack even if you have 100% accuracy. Right.
Yeah.
But that's the chance is very low of that happening. The difference with other competitive play, so I'm thinking like sports, which I've played, and like PvP, is that it is based on, am I close enough to this person to swing my sword and hit them, or am I good enough at aiming that I can hit them from really
There's a
far
skill.
away? There's a skill. Not that Pokemon doesn't have skill, but it is based on you swinging your sword at the right time.
True.
In Pokemon, it is RNG, right? So if you walk into a human battle without a strategy, that means that you are going to be so low on chance of winning, like random numbers.
There's no amount of skill that will ever account for that.
If you don't have a strategy.
And just to sort of counter what you're saying a little bit, in a game like chess, while you can't possibly account for every possible level of mastery and the meta of what's going on, or the openings and closings, they don't just tell you what the pieces are and how they move and then say, all right, now go play. Every chess program I've ever had at least teaches you a few openings, a few, like, basic moves, a few things to avoid, right? Everybody has to go through getting beaten by the fool's mate once. But this is like a game that only told you
Time matchups.
Or, like, if this was chess, they would only tell you the shapes of the pieces. And then they're like, all right, well, you can figure out chess from there.
Well,
have a good time with it.
Well, that's because, like, I think type matchups is the equivalent of, like, chess openings, right? Like, that is the basic strategy that a 4-year-old needs to be able to beat the game.
Beat the game, yes.
And, like, even Zero Punctuation, when he did a review of that, I think it was Pokemon White.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, yeah, you know, I just got a bunch of different types, and I went through and I beat the game, right? And so, of course, you can do that. The meta, though, is so much more complicated.
Yes, and that's what we're saying.
And I don't, no, and I agree with that, and I get it, but I don't actually know that they can teach that in the game. Well, okay.
Of course they could. The online
Okay.
articles teach you.
Do I look like I'm about to say something?
For the record, audio listeners, he did look like he was about to say
I did.
something.
It was all intentional, right?
Body language, nonverbal
Okay,
communication.
so from like ROM hack playthroughs,
Right.
some of the teams that the hacked, of course, gym leaders use are good enough that you actually do need to have like actual strategies to beat.
Right.
But that is just not the game these people want to make.
Right, that's what we're saying. Like, it's not the game they want to make, but then the
But then they
online has
still
created that for them.
allow that for them.
Sure.
So,
So-
like, if that wasn't
right.
the game they wanted to make, don't have an online mode.
why would they turn off the online mode? I mean, that just doesn't even make sense.
It makes the money
From a
here.
money
I think that so this is something you talked about before. So at the end of this game, there's a tournament where you fight the gym leaders again.
You have to
So
go back
in
and face
these
them
gym
all
leaders,
again.
if they did something like, they don't have to teach you how to beat these people. What if they go like, okay, so you fought this person once before, they used bug Pokemon, but now they got some new Pokemon, and their strategy is based on having a really heavy sweeper, which means one really strong Pokemon, just so you are familiar with the terms that will be used when you go online, and you have to like, okay, so they have one really heavy sweeper, maybe I need someone that can tank some hits, so that I can, it doesn't have to be like super duper AI formatted so that you have to have like strategies on strategies on strategy, but just so you know, to like, hey, and
What
then
the
you
terms are.
what the terms are. And then you fight someone else. Like, this is a person
This
who
is a
likes
Burnstall
to,
team.
a Burnstall. They like to throw out like hazards. So be wary of switching in. All you need. So basically, it's just a premise of like, hey, these are different strategies that exist.
I agree with you that there's a gulf between type matchups and competitive play that will never be reached. But I'm saying they stop
bridge that a little bit.
4 feet back from the gulf. And I think you could bridge it just a
Well,
little further.
I mean, I want to be clear here that, and I mean, we'll see if we get. I feel like I keep jumping ahead in the script, but one of the questions that Phil asked us today was like, "What is your ideal Pokemon game?" And my ideal Pokemon game would be one that absolutely does exactly what you guys are saying. I mean, ROM hacks. I don't think they're. I just can't.
Yeah, I
them
think
ever
that
actually making
I
it.
think we're all in agreement. It just sounds like we're not. It's basically like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
saying we
I
can't
think
bridge
so.
that gulf, and we're saying like you don't have to because you can't. You just have to tell me what some of these terms are in the game,
Get
so that
closer
when I
than
get
you currently
yeah.
are.
I just
Yeah.
think that. I think my position is that I just don't think they will.
No, I
don't think they will either.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely will not.
definitely not.
Oh no, we
No.
agree 100% on that.
Agree on that.
I wish. And
This game prints money. They're not changing a thing.
oh
with it.
yeah,
yeah.
And I wish the game I wish the game like pushed you into using those like
Yeah,
strategies
exactly.
because I also think it really does help with like replay, right?
Yeah, and it's not
'Cause-
as rewarding if you're just like I can just level up and kill
Exactly,
things.
right? If it's
Yeah.
like fire blast, or at the point in my game, ember.
Well,
But
and to redeem myself, I did rework the team, read a whole bunch of technical guides online, and I'm now rank 4. So like,
yeah,
it can be done, it can be learned, but like,
it takes a while.
it takes a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. No, I remember my first like playthroughs on Pokemon Showdown, which is for those of you who don't know, that's like Smogon's like online playing server.
And what
Wow.
is
What is
Smogon?
Smogon?
Smogon is a website where a bunch of Pokemon players, Pokemon fans, Pokemon fanatics, come together and collate guides and walkthroughs and strategies.
It's a great website.
Oh, it's a wonderful resource. If you're ever like, man, I don't know how to play to this Pokemon strings.
If they wanted to
Someone
do it in a
else
very
will figure it
lazy
out.
way, they could have just had the bookshelves in the
Yeah, yeah.
library hyperlink to a browser opening to Smogon.
That
would have been really nice.
That would have been really
Would
cool.
have been so easy to program.
But so what Brandon was saying about like the replayability too, because sometimes I feel like that's why we create these Nuzlocke rules, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not as rewarding. Because I like to play by setting up hazards and by having other Pokemon play themselves. So like I have a Pokemon that like if you confuse me, it raises my attack by 5 stages.
Or your poison gym leader.
Yeah, exactly. I like that kind of stuff. But in the way you battle NPCs, that is not a rewarding strategy for several reasons. One, because you don't need it most of the time, and second, because a lot of players only have 1 or 2 Pokemon.
Right.
So me setting up spending 3 turns setting up hazards
For the one Pokemon.
for the one Pokemon makes no sense, right? So that's part of why I think the ROM hacks come in too, where they're like, okay, let's make this worthwhile for you to have either a specific strategy that you are like, I'm committed to this and this is how I'm going to do all of them, or you can mold your team around what you want to do. In these games, again, they're for 8-year-olds and that's how they make these games, but then they sell them for everyone, is be stronger. It's get good. And get good is be 15 levels above.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like a stall team, like you were saying, Phil, plays just so different from like, say, a hyper offensive team, right?
Yeah. So to define these things for our audience that isn't as nerdy about this as we are. No, don't apologize. Stall team means that you are creating situations where the other Pokemon is taking damage and you are never taking an attack, basically, so that they're dying based on secondary damage, like being poisoned, being burnt, or you're like doing very little damage, but they can't hit you. A hyper offensive team is a team that has like 3 huge dragons that'll one hit you no matter what you do. That's the idea, right? So there's different ways of going about it, but if you're playing just for fun, so to speak, you can just over-level your Pokemon. But then they put you in this competitive mode where all Pokemon are the same.
Are level 50.
Oh, yeah.
And they revert them all to sort of generalized stats minus plus EVs and IVs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it completely changes the game that they've been promising you.
And I think the Terra comes in here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can use do some real clever things with the Terra in these scenarios. Whereas in the game, like we were talking about last, I always say class.
Let's just call it classes.
Last show.
Sure, yeah.
You are either Terra. The gym leaders. Gym leaders are the only people that Terra and your rifle. They Terra because they're going to make that Pokemon the same type they are.
Right.
The only quote unquote surprise is the final battle because you have no idea because they have no indication of what they use.
Right.
So then they transform into rock, and you're like, oh, okay, that actually makes it easier for me to murder this thing.
And in a lot of cases, like the Terra objectively makes the Pokemon worse.
Worse.
Like with Sudowoodo,
Yeah.
you go in there with fire types.
And
then fire types beat all of his grass type Pokemon, and then he sends out a rock type, and you're like, oh, this will be a little bit of a challenge, and then he tears it to grass.
Yeah.
So that you can then beat it easily.
And this is why, as I have stated before, my ideal Pokemon game will not have monotype gym leaders. I love Pokemon. I really do. I promise. I know it doesn't come across. I really do. I care a lot. Got so many Pokemon games I want to play. Literally, not going there. Anyway, you know what? Anyways, I'm so tired of like being able to walk into a gym and be like, all right, Ember, boom, I win. That's why I'm like.
That's why a Terra I think was poorly used because if they did what we talk about the opposite, which is like,
sure,
here is a Sunflora, boom, now it is a fire type.
Right.
Which is exactly what you're using.
With chlorophyll.
Yeah, something like that. So you have to like strategize around it, but they didn't do that. So that's why competitive play there's some interesting like Terra stuff because you can eliminate weaknesses by terraing.
Yeah. And there's some interesting uses for it. So like one of the main uses for it obviously is like eliminating your weakness. You just come out, but what happens a lot with it is I end up using it like halfway through a battle when I need like one extra shot against the other team, right? Because if I have a grass type and they've been fire type attacking it, and I know it's going to die in 4 hits, right? But their Pokemon is also going to die in 4 hits, but they're faster. I use it a lot that way, where I can say hit 1 fire, hit 2 fire, hit 3 fire, Terra on hit 3. Now my guy's resistant to fire. It's going to take 3 fire hits, knowing they're going to use a fire move because they used it the first 3 times.
Yeah.
And then it allows me to have the 1 extra hit and kill them. And so there's like these tricks and strategies to terraring that don't come out to the point where it honestly feels like competitive Pokemon and mainline Pokemon story is just a different game.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Completely different game.
And the Terra definitely makes it more interesting than like Dynamaxing or the other stuff because the other stuff is just like this is a stronger Pokemon, period.
Yeah.
This one changes a little bit of so that's interesting as well. Like, but the conclusion here is that, and this isn't only exclusive to Pokemon, but it's that it is the competitive and the main game are 2 different things. And we just talked about how they teach you so much. Well, they teach you so little in a long time.
Right.
Basically, how to play this game, the basic. Like I just found out yesterday that if you hold the left trigger and you look at a Pokemon, it'll tell you its level.
Yeah, it'll zoom in on it and give you Pokédex info.
Exactly, which I did not. That would have been helpful. Also, if you eat a sandwich and you press the right D-pad, it'll tell you how long you have for that.
Cooking.
Cooking
in this
is
game,
a mess.
There's so much that could be done. And the worst part
And
is
I wish
they
it was
gave
better.
you a home ec class
That doesn't teach you how to cook.
that doesn't teach me how to cook. They invented a special mechanic, and they had a class dedicated to it.
They should have had in that class you doing things like cooking sandwiches in the class to learn.
Oh,
Video games are a unique medium that allows
Yeah.
you to train people how to play them while they're playing them. And I feel like the Pokemon Company just can... And other video games do this very well. Really, I mean, even just like basic Mario is a great example of a game that slowly teaches you how to play the game. And I feel like Pokemon just consistently blows these out.
Yeah, because the thing I think that we're talking about this whole time is that they're teaching you the wrong things.
The wrong things.
I already know how to throw a Pokeball, and even if I didn't, that is a prompt you can put in the menu that says like,
so easy
click
to figure out.
X to throw Pokeball.
Right.
Whereas instead of being like, you don't know how to catch a Pokeball, I'm going to show you. Here, throw this like this, and here's a 5 Pokemon. Oh, that Pokemon didn't get in the Pokeball. Well, that happens sometimes. It's like, cool, yes, I know all this.
Well,
What about, what does attack harshly mean? Like, I need this.
What does making a sandwich do, and can I make independent
What is Teensy Power? Did you know that?
Teensy Power.
Did you know that the experience point power. So like there's several meal powers. Like there's sparkling power, which is for shinies, and all this stuff, which I have to
the
look
powers
up.
that you get by eating the sandwiches in the game that they just teach you how to make by saying,
Go.
here's sandwiches, make that.
Yes.
They give you 10 times more instruction about how to throw a Pokeball
Easily.
than they ever do
Yeah.
on how to use their special new custom mechanic.
Which is hard to use because it's clumsy on purpose.
Yes.
Which we can the game mechanics. But the thing is that they don't tell you what these are very well. So like, if I told you that you can eat a sandwich that will give you experience point power level 2, what do you think that means?
You gain XP twice as fast?
You gain XP maybe twice as fast, maybe at least a couple level, maybe at least a little faster.
It's a fair assumption.
Right?
Sure.
What that actually means is that if you do experience point power water, that doesn't mean that your water type Pokemon is getting more experience.
Yeah.
It means that if you fight water types, they will yield more experience times 0.75, which is level 2, to your Pokemon.
What?
No one tells you that.
They'll just say things like power teensy.
Yes.
What does power teensy mean?
It means you're finding smaller
means you
Pokemon.
increase the chance to find smaller Pokemon when you're
Yes.
finding them in the field, which is a power I'm not sure anybody
Ever once.
asked for.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
Humongo, fine. Okay, that could
Maybe,
be fun.
yeah.
Like finding bigger Pokemon is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But finding the experience point power, the way they name it, it makes like it should be like experience gained or experience yielded.
Right.
Because the way they made it sound, it's like, okay, because in the beginning of the game, I would always eat grass things because I had a Sprigatito and it's a grass type. And then I found out like 25 hours in that that's actually the opposite effect.
Right.
It's not actually giving Sprigatito more experience. It is yielding from grass types. But I was like,
Not fighting grass. 'cause
Not
you're
fighting
using
grass.
A grass Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yep.
so that's the kind of stuff that they need to teach you, or at least have. If you play Fire Emblem, it's like notorious for
opposite.
having a million menus.
Guides
And
upon
I'm
guides
not
upon
being
guides.
like hyperbolic here. There are literally a million
I love
menus
Fire
in there.
Emblem. I'm gonna make you guys play in January.
Fire Emblem is great, but if you really want to get good at Fire Emblem, you have to read all these menus, which I don't a lot. But they give you the opportunity. I think that if there was a Fire Emblem competitive, with not just like mobile,
Right.
you would be able to do it with just the menus in the game. Because the menus in the game tell you literally everything to the point where you forget what you just read,
Right.
which is maybe
They
too
tell
much
you all
on
the
their side.
stats, all the breakdowns.
Yes.
It's clean.
Pokemon is the other way around.
Which
They're
proves
like,
that it can be done.
Yes.
And they're just fucking with us.
Pokemon is like, here's how to throw a Pokeball. Sandwich can really make or break whether you like catch a Pokemon or not, but figure it out yourself.
Right.
It's like, what?
Go
I
look
don't-
up the guides, and the guides are terribly written.
The guides are terribly written.
Guides
Yeah.
are terribly
Tech
written.
writing.
Wait, the guide's in the game or the guide's outside?
No, the guides outside.
The guides in the game
So,
are non-existent.
I played a lot of different games that involve lots of complex guides, right? I love World of Warcraft. Played that for like a bunch of years. Loved. I've played a lot of racing games, and racing games can get really complicated and technical. I'm telling you that Pokemon guides, even on Smogon, which are very comprehensive, are some of the least user-friendly
They assume
guides.
a lot of knowledge.
They assume a ton of knowledge walking in there.
They
It took
do.
me at least like 25 different clicks to figure out what a sweeper was before they would define any of this.
When you Googled Sweeper, what did it say?
Yeah, it was like I googled sweeper. I was like, "What is a sweeper?" And they're like, "This is a Pokemon that cleans up the battlefield." I'm like, wow, that's neat. That does not tell me what
Who
it
or
is,
what it is,
or
yeah.
wow. And it was like recommended sweepers or recommended like stealth rocks, and I figured it out eventually. I was like, "Oh, okay, stealth rock is something that lays stealth rock. That one's pretty clear." But like the guides on Pokemon are some of the most obtuse.
And as a
probably
tech writing professor,
Oh.
I think we should do something like.
Oh.
I think we should do a study on looking at.
This is like some
I
of
think
the
we should
different
like do
online
it like
guides.
a tech writing study on that.
Icy Veins, which is a World of Warcraft one, has one of the best laid out sites where everything that you could possibly click on is a hyperlink that when you hover over it tells you what it is, and when you click on it takes you to that initial item. Yeah, they're all user generated, so I don't really harp on these people because they're doing it as a hobby, right? So they can do what they like at their own pace. But it compounds with that issue of Pokemon
Not putting stuff
doing
on.
shit.
But even I was talking to John about this because like so there are shiny Pokemon. If you dear listener don't know what that is, it's not a Pokemon that's actually shiny.
It's a Pokemon
It's
that is
a different color.
right.
Right? It's just like in the world you can see like a cheetah that is somehow black. Like there's mutations. Right? So it happens rarely. In Pokemon games, the odds are like 1 in 4,096 or something like that. The only way you could know that is by data mining the game.
Yep.
That information does not exist anywhere else. And if you were like, okay, so I really want to catch shiny Pokemon because I want to catch a different color of my favorite Pokemon. I want to catch a different color of Toxapex. Great. the way you like maximize your odds in this game is by eating sandwiches, by getting a shiny charm, which helps you find more shinies. But none of those tell you actually you will have now 2 times more chance of finding. They just tell you your odds of finding a shiny are better.
Which I would almost be okay with if that was supposed to be like an Easter egg, right? If they're like, sometimes you'll find Pokemon of a different color. We're not gonna tell you anything about it. It might just happen. It's a little mysterious. But because they give you a shiny charm and they make shiny sandwiches, they've said. This is a game mechanic that we would like to support and we would like to give you chances for that we will also tell you jack shit about.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Like, in the event, heaven forbid, that all of society collapses, the only thing remaining is Pokemon Scarlet. No one will know how to play this game.
No. They'll know how to throw Pokeballs, though.
They'll know how to throw the shit out of Pokeballs.
Yeah, so this is a rant that took longer than I expected.
I'm good with it.
It was good.
That's
it was a good
point.
time.
Yeah, just dominated half the episode.
So game mechanics, they don't do a great job at. True, they don't do a great job at like explaining how they work, except for the ones that are really obvious. Which gets to what Brandon and I was talking about before, which is, remember we talked about nuzlocking in the first episode and what it is. Basically, your Pokemon, if they die, they're gone forever, and you can only catch the first Pokemon you see.
Right.
The Pokemon Company, this is not an exaggeration, hates nuzlocking with
Do not like nuzlocke.
burning passion. They have compared nuzlocking to, that was Brandon, by the way. That wasn't inserted by me after the post edit. That was Brandon doing that sound. They like have compared people who nuzlocke as being worse than people who hack the game and create different versions of it.
Which is objectively cheating.
Objectively cheating. They have compared people that cheat. They use cheats to get more Pokemon to beat the game as worse than people who try to play it without Pokemon dying. Which I would argue is the best way of playing it because
It makes you care about
it makes you care about the Pokemon, which is the whole thing, right? So they have actually come out with the statement saying like, hey, we misunderstood that whole nuzlocking thing. We thought that nuzlocking meant you are hacking the game so you play with Pokemon not dying, which I don't believe. There's no way no one in Game Freak in the Pokemon Company knows what nuzlocking is.
I might believe it. I
don't.
I might believe that like
They think
they're
nuzlocking
so
is hacking.
It would explain so much about all the Pokemon games that they're like, we don't ever listen to feedback from anyone. We just take this game, make it in a small lab, and then go home, and we're just shocked when it sells.
Yeah.
At all.
So I see what you're saying. I don't believe that there's a single person in there. Maybe the higher ups are like nuzlocking is cheating, and someone in the background is like, yes.
Yeah.
But hierarchy, structure, Oriental culture, it's very important. So maybe the people who know are on top, but still, they hate it.
Well, there you have it, folks. We've cheated our way through a.
We have, and something that I think is interesting. True, because he lost.
Learn the evil of his ways.
Wait, but I lost by obeying the rules apparently.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, well, I don't want to cheat, so I'm gonna cheat to beat this cheating. Cheat. Paradox Pokemon.
Paradox Pokemon.
Ah?
So, the reason that we talked about this, the reason we add nuzlocking rules is because we want to make the game more fun, deeper, more feels like an anime protagonist,
right?
More strategy, right? And for me, it's kind of in between those two, where I want some challenge. I want to be able to use it. I want to be forced into a strategy, not I can walk in here and just use Ember on a grass Pokemon 4 times and win. Right. Usually, the reason I got into nuzlocking is because I hadn't played Pokemon in like 10 years before I played Shield.
Yeah.
And I was doing it, and I was like, well, this is kind of boring, but like I heard about this thing nuzlocking once, maybe I'll try it.
Yeah. And
I got super into it. So it's kind of ironic that I thought that nuzlocking this game was perhaps less fun than just playing it.
Right.
So nuzlocking is the reason I got back into Pokemon. In this game, I was like, I wonder if not nuzlocking would have been more fun. And I don't know if it's because it's a new one. I don't think so, because I played Sword and Shield as if it was new because I knew nothing about it. Right? Same with Brilliant Diamond. I had never played that. Or Brilliant Diamond. I'd never played that before. Played it nuzlocking, enjoyed myself, even though I lost in the Elite Four. Right. I really enjoyed it. I think there's a couple of reasons for this. And one is like, because we were doing this together for posterity with each other and with the audience, hello audience, even though I like to think I'm not like a competitive person.
Right.
I was still like, I need to make sure my team is successful to go against John and Brendan at some point for this podcast. So I put this like outside pressure on myself, which is again an element of video game demand. Right, we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, which is I have a social demand on me that is much greater than my usual nuzlocking.
Right.
Or playing any game, such that at this point, which is also why I don't like to play competitive online, because that's not why I play games, that I'm playing this to not fail. Whereas whenever I'm nuzlocking, usually I'm like just having fun, quote unquote, even though it's strategy, right? I create the rules to have fun. In this game, it felt like the rules maybe have less fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it could be that in a way that I didn't expect, because I'm not competitive, so I don't know what happened here. Maybe I am competitive, and someone I know can tell me that. But I like to think that I'm not that competitive. But I actually usually have the most fun in battles. In this game, as I talked about, I didn't want to face trainers because I'm like, I can't afford to lose here. Right. Whereas before, I'm like, if I lose here, whatever, I'll just restart. And now I'm like, I can't afford to lose that. And the second thing, and again, I can't say for sure that these are mutually exclusive or are a combination, or either one of them is a cause.
Right.
Because this is my first time ever doing this with other people.
Right.
But part of what's fun about nuzlocking is walking into an area and randomly finding a Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
In this game, because of what we talked about, they're walking around and it looks awesome, and they behave like weasels are in water and they're swimming around really fast. Weasels, like weasels. And then Lechonks are sniffing for truffles and food because they're pigs. It is fantastic. You walk into an area and you see 7 Pokemon you can catch, and all of a sudden, the thrill of finding one randomly is gone for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think was either the second reason or the main reason or one of the reasons, right? So I don't know if they did this on purpose, but I think that these changes that they made of like letting you walk in and see every Pokemon and all this stuff has effectively and also the fact that like areas are no longer separated by loading screens.
Clear divided.
There's no clear division. It is more difficult to nuzlocke a game now than ever if you're going by traditional like blind finding Pokemon, whatever you do. Right. So I don't know if they did this on purpose, but I think they made the game less fun to nuzlocke unless we adapt what nuzlocking means. And John and I were talking about this, about doing a skylocking, where you, whenever you get into a new area, you turn the camera to the sky and just run. And the first Pokemon you run into, as long as it's a new one.
Because I did that in a couple of areas. Just
and it was
fun.
great.
And
I did that too.
Randomize it.
Yeah. I walked into an area, I looked up, and I just ran until something ran into me, and I caught a Golduck. I was like, what? Cool. I had no idea you were here.
The one.
So I think that if I were to do this again, I'm going to, because I like to like nuzlocke with different rules. Next time I do it, first of all, I'm going to do a run where I only catch poison Pokemon and become the poison type gym leader.
Yep.
And the second one I'm going to do where I'm like skylocking. Every time I walk into an area, I'm looking up and I'm only catching Pokemon that I've never used in this game before.
Well, for the expansion, when the expansion comes out, because it will,
yes.
there will be an expansion, and the expansion in these new games are great. They're actually like entirely new areas, basically. About 3 or 4 new areas. I think we should start with a full Wonder Trading team.
Interesting. I thought about that too.
I think that would be fun.
For context, Wonder Trading is when you surprise trade a Pokemon.
Send a Pokemon out, get something completely random back.
Online. But yeah, so that's what I was thinking about nuzlocking, which is really ironic because we create these rules to make it more fun. But I think I might have had less fun because of I could see the Pokemon. So I was like, even if I was trying to keep myself honest to my best of my ability, where I walk into an area and I'm like, this is the first Pokemon that caught my eye, but I'm like, oh, but that's cool though. So you're like, conflicted,
like
and that was
the loss of knowing that you could have
exactly.
Yeah.
And it was really in the beginning of the game. I will admit that a couple times I'm like, okay, I'm gonna catch this one instead. At the end of the game, I'm like, I have so many Pokemon that whatever. But and part of that maybe was a competitive thing as well, where I'm doing this with other people,
right?
Even though I'm not necessarily competitive. So it created maybe a perfect storm where I wasn't having as much fun. I'm having more fun now that I'm playing still by some Nuzlocke rules, but I don't care if they die, quote unquote.
Right.
I still do, but I don't care as much. So I think that maybe the changes they made have made it harder to have fun Nuzlocking because of 2 of the rules are catch Pokemon randomly, and the second one is new areas only. And now the areas divisions are not clear, and you can see all Pokemon.
Right.
So, yeah.
Man, I had a lot of fun doing this Nuzlocke. This was my first ever Nuzlocke. I've never done them on the other games.
You tried an Arceus.
I tried an Arceus, and it was bad. Yeah. If you want a game that kills Nuzlocking, Arceus will kill Nuzlocke.
I think that's part of it too.
They did it. They pulled it off successfully. That game is so hard to Nuzlocke. But I will say that I think enjoyed it more than had I gone through it, picked out my favorite Pokemon, pressed A to Ember through every fight, and got to the end of the storyline, which is how I played Pokemon games pretty much up to this point, right? If I didn't beat it on the first time, no big deal. Go back to the Pokemon Center, overlevel by 10 levels, come back, and so that anxiety-ness and competitiveness, I think, maybe, I don't know. I can't speak if it wasn't as much fun as old versions of it. The older versions of it might have been better, but it was still better than base game.
I think I agree with you. I think that it would be like I would have kept some of the rules instead of all of them based on the competitiveness and the finding Pokemon. So if we had changed it to skylocking, quote unquote, where we randomly run into an area or we have to wonder trade everything, I think it would have been would have alleviated that. Yeah. Brandon, what do you think?
That's a good question. I've been mulling over this idea. I haven't done it yet, but I want to, once I'm done with like this Nuzlocke and like the other hardcore Nuzlocke that I've got going on, I want to try a playthrough that's not a Nuzlocke, but is hardcore. Now, that sounds weird. Let me explain. So, get rid of the Pokemon dying rule, right, which is really at the heart of the Nuzlocke. But keep rules like, you know, battle style on set, no using items in battle, no over-leveling, and then try to get through the game like that. That way, you know, if you send out your Dragonite or whatever and it dies, I mean, yeah, that sucks, but Dragonite's not dead. You can bring him back in the next fight. He's just out for this fight, right? And so that way, like, battles against gym leaders are more like battles against an opposing player as opposed to literally a matter of life and death. And so that's one sort of, like, in-between that I've been mulling over trying. Because especially, I like the idea. We'll find out, I guess, if I like the reality. But I like the idea, at least, of trying to design a team from the beginning of the game that you are going to use to face every single challenge the game has to throw at you, and trying to design a team that can handle all of them.
That's fun.
Yeah,
right?
you can do like the 6 Pokemon Nuzlocke, which is like you can only catch 6 Pokemon the entire game, and once you do, you can't catch anything else. And then you can like just so there's no rule where they die, so you have those Pokemon the whole time. But still, you're quote unquote
you're limited,
stuck.
Because then you have to really choose and be like, do I want this one? Do I just walk past it?
You might have you might go like for the first 6 gyms with only 4 Pokemon because you can't catch the one you want until you have 7 badges or something like that.
Of course, I'm thinking of like designing your team from the outset. But
Exactly. Yeah. But still, you'd be able to, let's say for your perfect team, you want a Spiritomb.
Sure.
And they only come at level 45.
Yeah.
So you can only catch it or use it once you get to the 6th or 5th gym, right? So you can go the whole game with only 5 Pokemon for a while, which could be interesting too.
Yeah, that could be.
I think, I mean, at this point, like, this kind of builds into this conversation that we wanted to have, and since we're running a little close to time here, like, what is the ideal Pokemon game for you guys? Because I think we have very different answers.
All right, ideal Pokemon.
All right, Brendan, you go first.
You go. He's into it.
Right. Should I give like the whole thing, or just like
give us the 5-minute version?
5-minute version. All right. So, first of all, gym leaders are no longer monotype. That is out. All gym leaders are thematic.
Hold on. If you're not watching this on YouTube, I highly recommend you do that because Brandon is now full on looking at the camera. He is into this.
I am breaking the fourth wall.
Wait. When you say thematic, do you mean like based on strategy or based on like a theme of Pokemon?
Both.
Okay.
So Giovanni's team is built on offense because Giovanni values power above all else. However, he's not like his son Silver. Silver is hyper offensive. He only cares about power. Giovanni's been training for years now, so he's developed patience. So his team is about power, but with patience mixed in. So he opens his team.
Hold on. Giovanni is the baddie from the original Pokemon.
The original.
Yes.
8th gym leader.
Yes.
Leader of Team Rocket.
He
which
has
is
the Persian that got famous.
Pokemon Hitler.
Yes. Wow. Yes.
Yep.
He's a mob boss. He's not Hitler.
He tried to create a psychic Pokemon to dominate the world.
He does do some eugenics.
Yeah, he's pretty bad about it.
I must have missed that part of Gen 1. Jeez.
He only wants... Well, this is like TV show lore.
It's been a long time.
Anyway, he is a mob boss who also has some designs on what the human race should look like. But to your point, he is patient.
Yes. So he opens, because he was the ground type gym leader in Gen 1, he opens with the Tyranitar. Alright? So throw up the Sandstorm. There's our patience bit. Dragon Dance on the Tyranitar. There's the other patience bit. He takes the time to boost up his stats, and now he's opening up with a Dragon Dance Tyranitar, which is objectively terrifying, right? Also give him like a Regigigas. Change Regigigas' move pool to have things like protect, because why would he not? All right,
It's
so
cautious.
stuff like
It's
that.
cautious man.
Right,
That's how he built his empire.
Right, where he builds his power up slowly, but his team has like real heavy hitters, right? Like also like an Excadrill to take advantage of the
And
sandstorm.
every gym leader would have a theme like this.
Yeah, like
Their personality is their team is based on their personality, which is fair.
Yeah. So like Price, the 7th gym leader from Gen 2, he's an old man who talks about like the harshness of winter. So he's a stall-based person, probably
Stall-based ice type.
probably using a hail team, but not mono ice.
Yeah.
His team is all about stacking up those residual effects and stalling you out, right? And so each of these gym leaders,
Use an ice cube.
yeah,
Ice cubes. Have you seen ice cubes?
yeah.
Pokemon that like they can get hit once and not take damage, and if they're in a hailstorm, they'll always replenish their shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So each of these,
I like this.
yeah, each of these gym leaders, by the way, would have at least one legendary. All right. So when I say like give Giovanni Regigigas, I mean it. Give like Lancer, Rayquaza, or Dialga. I am dead serious about this. The final boss needs to have like a Giratina Origin or like a Ghost Arceus or something. All right. Give them like real teams with real strategies, but still make it like somewhat thematic and like appropriate for them. That way, every single gym leader is like a challenge that you have to negotiate and think about how to
Kind of what we're talking about. Whereas like each of these, like one gym leader is a stall gym leader, so like how are you going to approach this? Which doesn't 100% prepare you for competitive play, but it at least prepares you for what you might see.
True.
Yeah.
And what it really, and the thing that I really wanted to get rid of is it means that I can't go against Giovanni, and because I've seen hardcore nuzlockers do this. Go against Giovanni. Surf.
Right.
Boom.
That's what you
8th gym
hit.
badge.
Right.
You go up against this Giovanni, surf. Oh, sorry, Tyranitar's got plus 50% special defense and a water resist barrier. Now he just Dragon Dance, so he's faster than you, and now you are getting smashed. Also, like half of his team isn't even weak to water, so.
So beyond the gyms, that's it? Is just the gyms that matter?
Oh no, so I've got a whole thing, but I don't want to like.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Give us the one other key point.
Okay, so the entire world, I actually want like a Nightmare on Elm Street meets Pokemon game. All right, where Darkrai is the final villain, and Darkrai has created a nightmare world and trapped you inside of it, and so it's bits and pieces from all the generations. So like you go from like Gym 1 of Gen 1 to like Gym 2 of Gen 5, so you can get all the favorite gym
nostalgia
leaders.
visit,
Yeah.
a justification for a nostalgia.
Yeah.
Exactly, and so like you're jumping from gen to gen,
Interesting.
and at each gen you also get to pick which legendary from that generation you're going to catch. You can't get Ho-Oh and Lugia, but you can get one or of the other.
So at the end of the game, you could have only legendaries, basically.
Oh, yeah,
Provides the
absolutely.
justification for the nightmare too.
Yeah,
like for
yeah,
the
yeah.
high level gym leaders that
Yeah.
are really hard.
It's
Exactly.
a nightmare. Because
It's a nightmare.
Darkrai is just messing with you.
Is-
Right, and
Yeah.
Darkrai would be the final villain, so he is like the champion of the Elite Four. So after you get through, Darkrai is the last villain.
Who's Darkrai?
Darkrai is a dark type nightmare legendary Pokemon.
Yes.
Whom I have never.
In
met.
this case, he would have his own Pokemon.
He has his own Pokemon. He is a Pokemon trainer and a Pokemon.
And at the end, he enters himself.
Yes,
Ooh,
exactly.
Wow, this is good stuff.
He's got
I
a-
hope you're taking notes.
he's got a-
copyrighting this right here.
He's got
verbal copyright.
If someone will code this for me, like, I am so on board. I will write the whole story. I will help design teams. I want to play this so
If you
bad.
made this as a campaign in D&D,
Right?
it'd be a good time.
Be a good time.
This is actually my first D&D campaign was kind of like this. But anyways, so Darkrai's team is based around A, scary monsters, and B, sleep, which is the most annoying mechanic, so they'll have to find a way to balance that to not make it super annoying. He'll have like a Giratina Origin as his like ace, and after you've beaten all 6 of his Pokemon, he enters the field himself, and you have to fight Darkrai. But incidentally, Darkrai's Bad Dreams effect, his ability that like drains HP from any sleeping Pokemon, is always active on the field
Ooh.
while you're battling.
Because you are in a dream already.
He was
Right.
Nice.
Gym terrestrial.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like Darkrai kind of has like control of the terrain while you're battling him. This is my perfect Pokemon game.
That's good.
I want to play it so bad.
It's dark, but I'll take it.
That's pretty good.
Right.
I like that. My perfect Pokemon game is something I actually thought about when I was a kid, but I had never fully formed this thought until I listened to it's called Nintendo Voice Chat. It's IGN's podcast about Nintendo games. And when I was a kid, I was always like, well, what if I don't want to become champion? What if I want to become the the flying type gym leader? What if I want to become part of Team Rocket? What if I want to do this? And the Pokemon games never gave you that freedom, right? And now they're trying to give you some freedom where it's like, you don't have to become champion if you want, although you have to finish the story, but you can do the Titan thing first, or you can do the Team Star. Yeah, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? I didn't get to do my open world rant today. Maybe next time. But my idea was like, well, what if what if they gave you the option, like, once you beat a gym leader, you can either continue or you can become that gym leader, and then you have to manage that gym. So basically, it is a Animal Crossing Stardew Valley style
Pokemon game,
city management game with Pokemon. So the mechanic basically is you maintaining. So you start in like a podunk town with a tiny. You beat the gym leader, and you have, or like in the middle of nowhere, and your gym is the worst one, or whatever.
Right.
So the story of the game could be like, you have to work up your gym, so your city grows around it,
right,
so that you become the last gym, and then for you to beat the game, you have to enter the tournament with the champion and the other gym leaders and win that, and then you become the top gym leader if you want, right? That's beating the game. But then the mechanic continues where, do you want to be the top gym leader, or do you want to be gym number 4, which means that all your Pokemon have to be capped at level 35.
Yeah.
Which is also like a different kind of challenge. And then you can leave the gym for a few hours and go like try to catch new Pokemon. You can choose your theme for your gym, whatever like Pokemon type you want, or you can not have a monotype, right?
Did you ever play that game where you have to run the adventuring store for the people, for the adventurers that are passing through the town?
No, but that's exactly pretty much it.
Yeah, there's an RPG version of that where you go into the dungeon to find old gear that adventurers dropped when they died, having to fight the dungeon yourself so that you can put it in your store for the next adventurers to come down to the dungeon.
So it's pretty much it. So then you could do that like where there are NPCs that are randomly generated to come to challenge your gym every once in a while, and you can organize your gym, you can set it up, you can put like, different background music, you can put stuff on the walls, just like Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley, but you're a Pokemon trainer. And it's beautiful, and you can literally play forever, just like Stardew Valley.
Arceus team, the people that make Pokemon Mystery Dungeons. That's your game. That's the next
Isn't that amazing?
That'd be a great one.
Isn't that amazing?
I definitely.
Yeah. So this is partly from Kat Bailey at NBC, and partly my ideas when I was a kid that never fully formed.
Right.
I don't necessarily need all of the like management aspects. I just kind of want to become the gym leader, and then you can open up to online, right? So online competitive play is people trying to challenge your gym.
Right.
Which would be awesome.
It would be great because then you'd have the gym, and you could. I mean, it'd be amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
It'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'm proud of myself for that one, for listening to that podcast and stealing that idea.
It's a good one.
And by the way, I would be the poison type gym leader and stall you out.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, tracks. It'd be really cool because then you could also like set up tournaments where like you have to face 8 gym leaders, but they're all online competitive.
Exactly.
People, which would be great.
Exactly.
And then you were allowed like any Pokemon of any level, and so you could just womp them, but then they would like judge you for it silently and stuff like that. Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be awesome. I'm just gonna shit all over Pokemon Go here for a second. My ideal Pokemon game is what Pokemon Go should have been.
Okay.
Right? I want the full AR experience. I want to be able to like walk around my town, get Pokemon, find them, battle them, take care of them, but not be locked into bad rating schemes and bad, right? Like all the mobile game nonsense.
The mobile game nonsense.
That Pokemon Go
mobile
is
game SEO.
in, right? I want you to be able to set up a gym and run a gym from your house, and then me to be able to challenge your gym because you're there, right? I want to be able to like walk around, and I want it real Pokemon battles. So they have this, for those of you that haven't played Pokemon Go, they have this weird mechanic where you don't actually like train your Pokemon. You just catch more Pokemon of the same type, mulch them, and create candies from their corpses to then feed your current Pokemon.
Beautiful.
That's how you power it up.
And they don't like Nuzlocke, but they're cool with that.
And they're cool with that. But, I would have liked a game where you actually train your Pokemon, have a four move battle system just like all the other Pokemon games, find TMs that works like a Pokemon game, but in the regular world. And I would have loved, though it would have taken way too much balls to implement, or way too much lack of greed to implement, is a game that regional locked Pokemon.
Yeah,
if you're in New York, what you get is Pidgeys. Congratulations. You don't want a Pidgey, you have to live trade it to someone else.
They used to do it.
Get at the very beginning, just a little bit. But even then, they still had a wide range. I would have loved a game where you had to like actually meet and train people with all over the world that would almost force like a nuzlocking experience, where you'd be like, well, South Dakota's known for its Caterpies, so I guess I've got a Caterpie. I'm gonna have to train the best darn Butterfree.
Yes.
Or I'd have to trade with people online or collaborate with them.
Yeah, and if you want like an ice type Pokemon, go to Alaska.
Go to Alaska.
Yeah.
Right? And I understand why they don't, because they're like, well, that just makes the richest people have the most Pokemon. That's life. That's how it works in the real world.
Oh, wow.
And if I want a Pokemon game that resembles like what a Pokemon world
I would be super down with that. Where like, if you're in New York, all you catch is Pidgeys and Starlies and Pidgeys and like Magikarps.
Guys, you're forgetting the Rattatas.
Right?
Also, a lot of Rattatas.
Few different types.
Mostly Raticates, actually.
Yeah.
Unique ones would be other places, and you have a trade system set up, and then I would like a game where you could like set up your own gyms, set up your own Pokestops, make it feel like a Pokemon world based on who was playing around you at that point.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Legit.
Yeah.
You do realize this means that Mew is in South America, right?
I'm fine with that. That's golden, right? And we could have special exceptions for like.
Yeah, Mew could travel around or something.
Travel around. Yeah. Special exceptions for legendaries.
At the very least, he needs to like travel around South America, so like Phil can get us all Mews.
Right. That could be the way to go. But yeah,
that's awesome.
An overlay AR game is the pinnacle. And perfectly, you would have like Google Glass, and then you'd be able to like throw it and have a battle in your backyard.
You have a little glove, yeah.
Right.
So there you have it, Nintendo. You have a Animal Crossing Stardew Valley type, start your own town and gym leader
spin-off game
with Pokemon.
A mainline game.
A mainline game where it's a nightmare and all gyms are really tough because it's a nightmare. And a mobile game where it's actually region locked and you have to work for your Pokemon.
To work for your Pokemon and bond with the one.
So Nintendo, if you're listening, which I know you are, please give us credit because they watch like very tiny podcasts.
Professor's Play is big in Tokyo.
And by big, he means we've got one viewer.
I'm gonna have to put like a little disclaimer at the bottom. Okay, so first to finish up, one last thing we wanted to do real quick. We're not gonna take as much time for doing this, but if you ever heard of whenever you're doing some sort of, I guess maybe final review, or maybe I've done this in like psychology therapy stances, where you think of one thing that you really like about something, which is called a rose, one thing that you did not like, which is called a thorn, and one thing that you want to see more of, which is called a bud. For this, we're calling it roselia, ferrothorn, and budew. Those are Pokemon.
Amazing.
It isn't amazing.
It's great.
Thank you very much. So I'll start real quick. So my roselia is that the small details in Pokemon behavior, right? Like I said, the Zangoose and the Seviper are fighting in the real world because they are mongoose. They're mongooses, and they are vipers, and they fight in real life, and they fight in the game. So creating this, while some Pokemon run away from you, especially if they see you fighting someone else and destroying them, they'll turn away and run. Some Pokemon will attack you because they're really aggressive.
Love it.
I thought that was beautiful. The Ferrothorn is the performance is obviously something to mention, right? I don't think that you can get away from that. But my biggest issue is the lack of level scaling, where if I am in an area where all Pokemon are level 50, but there's a Lechonk, that makes no logical sense. Because once a Lechonk reaches level 18, it becomes something else.
Right.
So while I think it'd be cool for the overworld to have like some Pokemon that never evolve, for there to be a pack of Lechonks all level 50 to me makes no sense, and also means that I shouldn't, like, this area is not for me to be in, even though there's a Lechonk here, so I should be able to fight this thing, right? I think that it would be cool to have some narrative stuff. This is my Budew actually. So taking that and thinking about how the Pokemon anime has all Ash's Pokemon, or a lot of them, are like special Pokemon. Like the Squirtle was the leader of a Squirtle pack with glasses. The Crocodiles, same kind of thing, right? So if in this world there were side quests where they were like, man, there's a Tandemaus that keeps coming in here and stealing all my stuff.
Arceus had it. Arceus did it really well.
The
village would build and grow based on like the Pokemon side quests you did. The side quests in Arceus are amazing.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like someone in the town is like, man, there's a Tandemaus that keeps coming here and stealing my Pokédolls. You find that Tandemaus, and when you find him, he comes with 10 Pokédolls, but he has a specific move that no other Tandemaus has.
Exactly.
So creating an environment where like there are special Pokemon out there. The random ones you find, it makes sense that they're not, like, if they're not level 50, they don't have to be level 50 because Lechonks don't get to that point. So I think level scaling is the Ferrothorn, because you actually are closing me out of areas if even the Lechonks are level 50.
Right.
And then my Budew, what I wanted to see more is, I think the story in this game is great, but what I wanted to see more of is side quests where they direct you in a place where it is a specific thing that you can only catch or do if you do the side quest.
Or just side quest at all.
Side quest at all.
Yeah. I
So
agree.
I think it'd be really cool to be like, yeah, there's a squirrel around here that's causing mischief, and he wears sunglasses, and you have to find that squirrel.
Right.
And if you find that squirrel, maybe it has a different mark that means that whenever you throw it out, it says like prankster squirrel or whatever it is.
Right.
Which is enough to make me want to catch that squirrel.
Yeah.
Right.
And gives me a narrative reason to catch another Pokemon instead of just being like, well, you want to catch them all, so just
They already introduced titles and badges. So
Exactly.
Like, it's perfect.
So
fit.
like Tandem Mouse that keeps stealing stuff, or there's a like a Staravia that protects all the other birds in this region. You got to go catch it or something like that, so
Yep.
that we can like actually feed the birds, whatever.
It'd be great.
Side quests that are narrative based on Pokemon, like they are in the anime.
Amazing.
I like it.
What do you have?
I'll go fast. My roselia is definitely that I loved the way this game's story ended. It was wild and amazing.
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner plus no grand world stakes, right? Because I love it.
I love when the stakes are low.
When the stakes, and they don't have to be like super low.
No,
Obviously, we're still
real.
like real environmental disasters set to happen here. This would be the equivalent of like a nuclear plant melting down in Chernobyl, but not God has showed up to punish the humans.
Just every JRPG.
Every JRPG, yeah. Not we don't have to go that extreme. Roselia. Ferrothorn, performance issues really didn't bother me that much throughout the whole game, so I would say one of the biggest Ferrothorns for me was just that the second round of gym leader battles. So you beat all the gym leaders once, and the game says, we're going to hold a second grand tournament, go beat them again. All they did was take those same gym leaders, level them up 40 levels, and change basically nothing. I would have liked
no strategy.
no more progression.
Yeah.
And wouldn't even have to be like no strategy. Like even if they just made all of those level 100, it would have been a little more interesting. But whatever. Then the budew, the thing that could have changed the most for me, that I would have liked to see in this game that I didn't see in this game, is some end game content, which I understand will probably be released as DLC because that's the awful world we live in. But like once you get to the end of the game, there's online battles and there are terror raids, and that's it. There's no battle tower. There's no like concrete post-game stuff. You get to face all the gym leaders again once, but that's it. And the legendaries are all the same. You pull a bunch of stakes out of the ground and they appear somewhere, but you could do those at any point in the game. They're not like specifically ending content. So there's nothing to keep me playing this game for like a year and a half, unless I was
Beyond
really
the
into
typical
competitive.
catch 'em all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond
Okay, so Roselia, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I like seeing the Pokemon wandering around.
It's fun.
That's just kind of
It's
cool.
It's real fun.
It really makes the world a lot more immersive, and yeah, like the thalassophobia thing is real. Watching the water Pokemon surface is
Veluza?
just so cool.
Veluzas are a type of like tuna that just run at you in the water.
real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it scared me a couple times.
Ferrothorn. You know, I'm going to have to kind of foreshadow, I think, some of what Phil will probably say next time, which is, yeah, the leveling is kind of weird. Now, admittedly, I haven't made it very far in the game, but the random level 40 Houndoom showing up when I've got like a level 6 Flake
I was
Coco.
gonna say, I think you were talking about like the glitchy cutscenes.
It happened again.
It happened again? I did it twice and it didn't happen.
It didn't happen either time. It pulled my Pokemon back into
Yeah.
a ball.
He keeps using Crunch on me.
He does use Crunch, but before it
hits, it goes whoop,
Yep.
and it puts it back in your Pokeball.
Anyway, I'm just done with this. Alright, so random level 40 Pokemon showing up out of nowhere with no warning. Seriously? Okay, I want challenge. That's not a challenge. That's you running me over with a semi-truck.
Yeah.
Budew, what could you grow from the game?
Oh man, so many things. Like, think of all the cool Pokemon that you could see in the overworld, like Lapras. Or Lapras.
They're coming in the expansion.
Or maybe, and just maybe,
Labyrinth?
follow me here, Lapras. It is a lake monster. This is like a perfect opportunity. I'm telling you, it is a winner. I want my overworld Lapras. If you can't tell, I've been kind of down on this game a little bit. I still love Pokemon. It's got its claws into me. Lapras' siren song is calling me to Union Cave, and I really look forward to see where they go with it, and I do still look forward to eventually actually having like a Shaman and a Dialga and a Mew and all these like awesome legendaries. I haven't
Mew
gotten
just
to
running around would be awesome.
Floating?
right?
Floating, yeah. So,
That's what I'm saying.
final impressions, clear performance issues, some stuff that can be done better, but clearly a great game.
Amazing game.
John's favorite Pokemon game. For me, it's very, very close. Like I said, it's the first time I'm going to complete a Pokedex ever.
Yep.
So at least honorable mention, if not first. And Brandon is looking forward to the game, even though he's a grumpy old man. So we know it's a winner.
That's
so we're going to wrap it up here. So join us in a few weeks when we're going to have a special episode about the lore of Pokemon. And if you get lucky, you get to hear my rant on this game not being open world.
We might start with that.
Maybe we start with that just so we weed out the people that don't actually want to listen
To a little rant about Pokemon ontology.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
why
here
they
for it.
that's why they listen to this. But yeah, join us in a few weeks when we do that. And until then, join us Professor's Play, where conversations about video games come as the pixel of deep thinking, but mostly nonsensical conversations.
You're all awesome.
See you in a few weeks.